Okay, good morning. So, we're going to go over chapter 14. It's over pain and anxiety, which most patients have anxiety when they go to the dental office. So, for most dental procedures, pain control is accomplished with the application of topical and local anesthetic. So, topical is like the numbing gel, it's almost like Oragel, but it's stronger. And so we as dental assistants will swab that in the patient's mouth. It sits for about 3 to 5 minutes, and then the dentist and we leave the cotton tip applicator in the mouth. Um, and the dentist will come in, take it out, and then he'll numb up. Now we do get the syringe ready. We load the syringe. We get out extra anesthetic for him to numb up. So we place topical, get the syringe ready, but he actually does the injection. And when we're in clinic, I'll show y'all how to load a syringe and how to place topical. So, good times. All right. Also, too, if the patient is really nervous, uh, we can ask if they want nitrous. Nitrous oxide is the laughing gas. It just kind of um, it just kind of relaxes the patient. It makes them feel like they're kind of floating, like they've had maybe a few glasses of wine. Um, and so, one second, sorry. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. So the nitrous oxide, like I was talking yesterday, that y'all can get certified uh, in nitrous, and that just means that you can sit in the room and observe the patient while they're on nitrous. And the dentist actually we can take the nose, and the nose, uh, it comes in different scents sometimes, like bubble gum, strawberry, and we can put that on the patient and start the oxygen, but the dentist actually comes in and turns the nitrous part on. Some offices offer it for free. If they don't, I think it's $75 if the patient wants the nitrous. All right. We talked about topical. If you turn the page on 190, at the top is what the topical looks like. It's like a gel form, and it comes in different flavors. It still tastes bad. So, what they say is the topical kind of numbs the tissue. So, when he sticks the needle in, it doesn't hurt as bad. I still think it hurts. So, when he does numb up, the first phase is the induction. So the induction is the time frame from when the injection is given to the complete effective of the numbness. It usually takes about 5 minutes for the patient to start feeling it after he numbs them up. So what I like to do is I'll go like this on my patient's lip on the bottom. If they get numbed up on the bottom, I'll go like this and I'll say, does your lip feel big and fat, or does it still feel tingly? If it still feels tingly, I'll get the dentist, and the dentist will have to give them more. And then on the top, they don't get big and fat like they do on the bottom. So I'll get a instrument like an explorer, and I'll gently touch the gum on the top, and I'll say, "Do you feel that? Does it, does it feel like a poke?" And if they say no, then they're numb. But if they say yes, then I'll get the dentist and he'll have to give them more anesthetic. And then there are different types of anesthetic. There's short acting. There is long acting. Short acting would be maybe about 30 minutes to an hour. Long acting is like 2 hours, maybe even 4 hours. So it just depends on the procedure that he's doing, what type of anesthetic he's going to give the patient. If it's going to be a long procedure, of course, he wants long acting. The short acting, some patients that have high blood pressure or a pacemaker, they're going to give them an anesthetic that's called plain. And what that means is there's not any epinephrine in the anesthetic to make the heart race. Because sometimes with the epinephrine and the anesthetic, it makes the patient's heart race. It happens to me, not all the time, but sometimes it does. If your patient's like, I feel weird, something's going on, just keep them calm, and it usually will go away in about 5 minutes. So a vasoconstrictor is an added drug that has been added to the local anesthetic agent to slow down the intake of the anesthetic agent and increase the duration of the action. It prolongs the effect of the anesthetic agent by decreasing blood flow in the immediate area of the injection, and it decreases the bleeding in the area. That's what the vasoconstrictor does. The ratio of a vasoconstrictor to anesthetic, it can be 1 to 1,000, 1 to 2,200, 1,200. The lower the second number, the larger the amount of epinephrine in the solution. And when we get up to clinic, I will show y'all how to write out how much anesthetic the patient got. Because anytime that we numb the patient, we have to say what kind of anesthetic and how much. All right. So there's 2 different types of techniques when he's giving local anesthetic. And one is known as infiltration. And say on tooth number 9, they're just doing a filling on tooth number 9. He will just numb up at the apex of 9. And girls, let me tell you that it hurts. It kind of, it's right there under the nose. So it makes the eyes water. It's tender right there. So what I do is I just rub my patient's shoulder. So, but that's infiltration, where they just numb around the tooth that they're working on. Now, a block anesthetic, when they do a block, they numb up back here, and it will block the whole arch. Same thing here. It will block from here to here, so this whole part will be numb. Same thing up here. Same thing up here. But they numb up back here, and then it numbs all that. And that's called a block. Any questions? Has anybody never been numbed up at the dentist? Okay, so everyone's gotten the shot before. Yeah. Okay. All right. Transferring the anesthetic. So on state board, it will ask you, how do you recap the needle? We talked about this in the other chapter. Do y'all remember how you recap a needle?
The single hand.
Yep, the one-handed scoop method. Yep, that's exactly right. Yep. All right, so there's different lengths of the needle. There is a 25 gauge, 27 gauge, and a 30 gauge. The 25 gauge is going to have it's a shorter needle, and it will have a blue lid typically. And then the 27 gauge is a longer needle, and it's typically has a yellow lid. Depending on the dentist, and when you start working at a place and you're getting the syringe together, just ask another assistant this question: does he like blue for the top and yellow for the bottom? Because the blue, if he's using the short needle, he'll like to numb up on the top with a short, and then for the bottom, the longer needle, the yellow lid for the lowers. So, but then some dentists just use blue for the whole mouth, but some want blue for the top and yellow for the bottom. All right. So we talked about the single-handed scoop. Do y'all see that anesthetic at the top of 193? The picture of that anesthetic?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what a cartridge looks like. On there, it will tell you the name, the brand, the name of the anesthetic, and then it will tell you how much epinephrine is in it. So I always keep those, once he numbs up the patient, I'll put those to the side. So when I go to put in my notes, I just read that carpule. I just read the carpule and type it in. I'll show y'all in clinic. All right. With the nitrous, there'll be a room in your office, like a closet. And in the closet, they'll have the nitrous oxygen cylinders. One cylinder will be blue, one cylinder will be green. The nitrous will be the blue cylinder, and the oxygen will be the green. How I remember which one is which is plants are green, right? Why are they green? Because they get carbon monoxide, oxygen. So oxygen makes plants green. So that's how I remember that the green cylinder is the oxygen. Also too, do y'all see the nitrous mask on the top of 195?
Yeah.
Okay, in the middle, there's a it's called a scavenger, and what that does is it blocks us from getting the nitrous. A scavenger, it blocks us from getting the nitrous. Like the patient's getting high, but we're not. They're feeling the effects, but we're not. Oh, if you're pregnant or if the patient's pregnant, they can't have nitrous. So, all right. Now I'm on 196. Ooh, it's pouring here. Are y'all getting pour down where y'all are? The rain?
Here it's just more like foggy, misty.
Oh.
I've got like a sprinkle going on.
Ah. Well, it is pouring here. Yeah. Wow. Well, if we lose connection, I'll have to, I guess text y'all and we can set up a different time if that happens, if we lose connection, okay? All right. So there's different types of analgesics. There's strong and mild. A mild, and what that means is it's a pain medicine, would be Tylenol, Advil. And then a stronger one would be more like morphine, a stronger pain medication. But those the dentist has to prescribe. They have to prescribe those to the patient. Some patients also too, if they're really, really nervous, they want to be pre-medicated before the appointment. And so the dentist would prescribe like some type of prescription that
Anti-anxiety.
yeah, to help them relax. And so, but they take it an hour before their appointment, and someone has to drive them. So, yeah. All right. With prescriptions, brand names, if you look on, say you got a prescription and it was amoxicillin, the amoxicillin, that is the brand name. So those will be capitalized. If it's a generic, a knockoff of amoxicillin, then it wouldn't be capitalized. I didn't realize that until a long time ago. I mean, I know it now. Yeah. And anytime that we always have to put in the computer what prescriptions were given to the patient. And they are always go in red. What kind? Now, typically the dentist, he'll write out the prescription, and then he might put it in. But if he doesn't, then we have to put it in. And what's cool with like that Demtrix system, you at the top there's this button and it says RX, and you push it, and all the prescriptions that he typically will give a patient, we just click on it, it prints it out, we take it to him, he signs it, and we give it to the patient. So, but pharmacies are getting really strict with prescriptions, because people get addicted to those painkillers. And so most of the time they're just going to prescribe Tylenol 3 instead of anything stronger. Unless the patient really, really is like, I need something stronger, then he has to get it's called a triple pad. It's a special type of a prescription pad, and he has to fill that out. All right. And then y'all can see on 197 how the assistant is placing the topical on the patient's gum. Y'all see that? All right. Any questions? Okay. All right. Okay, let's get into chapter 15. So, guys, this is the hardest part of state board. It really is. Jurisprudence is also a hard part of state board. So when y'all go to study everything. You can also go on Quizlet. There's practice tests from Quizlet for state board. So All right, chapter 15, it's talking about radiation safety and production of x-rays. So one of the benefits and the reason why we take x-rays, and I'm on page 203 at the top in that box, is detects any decay in early stages, identifies bone loss in early stages, locates any abnormalities like tumors, evaluates growth and development. So if I took a X-ray on a child, the X-ray would show the baby teeth, but it also would show where the permanent teeth are as well, how they're coming in. Documents the condition of a patient at a specific time. So, like if say they had a small cavity and they didn't want to get that filled, and then a year later they come back, we can see how big it grew. And then if the dentist is in the middle of a surgical procedure and he's extracting a tooth and the root tip, he gets the tooth out, but the root tip isn't there, he might ask you to get an x-ray so he can see if the root tip is still in the jaw, or maybe it actually got sucked out when you're sectioning. So he might ask you to take an x-ray in the middle of surgery. Definition. X-ray beams can be defined as weightless bundles of energy, photons, without an electrical charge that travels in waves at the speed of light. So right now I want everyone to read the whole paragraph of atomic structure. Go ahead and read. Okay, so when we go to take an x-ray of a patient, we're not going to go, okay, so the photons and the atoms are going to collide and all this other. We're just going to say, okay, we're going to get an x-ray. So, but for State Board, they want you to know some of these specifics. So all matter is made of atoms. Atoms are extremely minute and consist of an inner core or nucleus that poses as a positive electrical charge. Number of negatively charged particles are called electrons that orbit around the nucleus. So there's a positive and a negative. And then the atoms turn in and form molecules. All right. So y'all need to know that for State Board, what an electron is. And what is an electron?
A positive or negative charge?
Yep. Okay. Ionization. Ionization is the harmful effects of an X-ray beam in humans that result in distribution of cellular structures and cause permanent damage to living cells and tissue. When an X-ray beam strikes a patient's tissue, ionization results. During ionization, electrons are removed and removed electrically stable atom by colliding with a photon. A photon is a minute bundle of pure energy that has no weight or mass. So y'all need to know what a photon is for sure. Like on state board, there's an A, B, and a C test. You don't know what test you're going to get. So Abby might get the question about a photon, and then Crystal might get a question about an electron. You don't know what's on the, what test you're going to get.
Is the state board test, is it all like multiple choice?
It is. It is. All right. Properties of an X-ray beam. Similar to visible light, like radio, radar, television waves, those are all in a group called electromagnetic radiation. Electromagnetic radiation. So the same type of radiation that we would get from a microwave or a radio is the same type of radiation that produces X-rays. So electromagnetic. So it almost says electronic. So think of your electronics. Like a radio is an electronic. So electromagnetic radiation. The shorter the wavelength of radiation, the greater its energy. Turn the page. Properties of an X-ray beam. Appearance is invisible. You can't see it. Mass has no mass or weight. Charge has no charge. Like when you take an X-ray, the patient's not going. Speed travels at the speed of light. Path of travel travels in a straight line, but can be deflected by scatter. That's why we put the lead apron on the patient, and we're always 6 feet away when we're taking an X-ray or behind a lead wall. Focusing ability cannot be focused. Penetrating ability penetrates solids, liquids, and gases. Absorption can be absorbed by matter. Ionization ability causes ionization. What's ionization again? Anybody?
A harmful effect of X-ray beams that could result in disruption of cellular structure.
There we go. That's it. Yep. Good. Effective film produces an image on the film. Effects on living tissue causes biological charge in living cells. So there's 3 types of, well, actually 4, but the major 3 types of radiation is primary radiation, secondary radiation, and scattered radiation. Guys, write state board on that table 15/1, the properties of an X-ray beam. Okay. All right, so primary radiation. If you notice, they're taking an X-ray on that lady on the top of 205. So the primary beam, the primary radiation goes directly to the film. Secondary radiation goes around the face. And then your scattered radiation goes everywhere. So again, that's why we have them wear a lead apron, or we are 6 feet away or behind a lead wall. So primary goes directly to the film, secondary is around the face, scattered is everywhere. Now there's what's called leakage radiation. That's known as a tube head, is what they're using on the lady to take the x-ray. That is a tube head. And if that tube head is cracked, it can cause leakage radiation. We won't know that. OSHA comes in and checks it once every 2 years. They have a special test they do on it. All right. So where does primary radiation go?
It just goes to the front of the face, right?
Yep, directly to the film. And then secondary radiation around the face. And then scattered goes where?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Yep, that's right. Good. All right. So now we're going to talk about the measurements of radiation. I'm on 205. Just as distance can be measured in miles or kilometers and time can be measured in hours and minutes, radiation is also measured. There's two different systems. There's traditional, and then there's your System International, your SI. So do y'all remember the guy's name that I said in chapter 1 that invented x-rays? Do y'all remember his name? It was William Roentgen. Remember I said y'all can remember that he invented x-rays because he used his hands to hold the film and his hand rotted off? Okay, so the traditional system, and when I think of traditional, I think of traditions, things that have been passed down in your families for generations, right? So I think all the traditional system is measured in Roentgen, rads, rems. They all start with R. The traditional system is measured in rems and rads, but it starts with R. So I think of Mr. Roentgen because he was so long ago, kind of like traditions, a long time ago, they've been passed down. Are y'all with me? You picking up? I mean,
Yeah.
you feel my vibe there. Okay. And then the SI, the System International, the newer system, that's measured in grays and silvers. And so I think of Happy New Year, and we throw glitter, and glitter is silver. So I think of the silvers and grays and Happy New Year. And so I remember that that is the newer system. It's little things that I don't know if it will help you, but if I can give you some kind of little scenarios, hopefully it helps you too. Okay. So radiation exposure, the term radiation exposure refers to the amount of radiation to which a person is exposed and is measured in SI units. What's the SI? Is it the newer or older system?
Newer.
Good. And kilometers per kilogram. The traditional term is the Roentgen, the R, and that's the older system. Okay, absorbed dose. Absorbed dose is like how much our body actually absorbs. So the amount of radiation energy actually absorbed by the tissue is known as the absorbed dose. The SI unit of absorbed dose is called a gray. The traditional system uses the term radiation absorbed dose as rad. So below, the conversion for rad and gray, 1 gray equals 100 rad, or 1 rad equals 0.01 gray. So once somebody might get a question, like Abby might get a question about what's absorbed dose, or it will say the amount of radiation that is absorbed by the body is known as. Well, it literally says it in the question. It's the absorbed dose. So you might get that question, but then someone else might get the question. 1 rad equals what? And it would be 0.01 gray. So that's for absorbed dose. So dose equivalence is measurement used to compare the biological effects. So biological effects would be we'll get into that in a minute because I don't want to confuse you. So we'll get into that in a minute. But 1 rem equals 0.1 silverts, and 1 SB, which is silverts, equals 100 rem. So someone might get a question about dose equivalence, and someone might get a question about 1 rem equals what. So you need to know, you have to study everything, everything. All right. We are exposed to radiation every day of our lives. It's known as background radiation. It comes from natural sources such as radioactive material in the ground, from space. So all that is known as background radiation. 2 important concepts are basic to radiation protection. The first concept is maximal permissible dose, and the second is ALRA principle. So your maximal permissible dose is how much radiation as a occupational exposure that we can get. We can get it. There's only so much we can get a year. So turn the page. How much can y'all read? How much can we get in 1 year? That's at the top of 206.
It's 0.05 silver.
Or 5 rem. Yep. That's how much we can get in 1 year. For a pregnant person, how much is it?
0.005 silver or 0.5 rem.
So it's even way less. Way less. If you have a pregnant patient, they can't get x-rays in the first trimester or in the 3rd trimester. So, and they definitely have to have a doctor's note saying whether or not they can or cannot take x-rays, have x-rays done. If you are the assistant and you're pregnant, You can wear a lead apron, and then make sure you're 6 feet away when you take the x-ray. Okay. ALRA. It stands for as low as reasonably achievable. Everybody say that with me.
As low
As a reason.
as reasonably.
As low as reasonably achievable. Good, good. So that means that there's a FMX. It's a full series of x-rays. A patient can only get that once every 5 years. So we don't want to take unnecessary x-rays if we don't have to. So that's what that stands for, as low as reasonably achievable. Not taking x-rays that don't need to be taken. Okay. All right. Biological effects of radiation. The effects of radiation may not be evident for many years after the time when the X-ray beams were absorbed by the body. This time is called the latent period. So I've been an assistant for 25 years. I've been around so much radiation, it's not even funny. But effects of it might not show up for 5 more years, 10 more years. It may never show up. But I'm fine. Little joke. Okay. So that is known as the latent period. The effects of the radiation may not show up. On state board, it is going to ask you this next question. It will ask you about radiation sensitivity to cells and tissue. What is the most, I forget how it's, I think it's worded like, what are the most sensitive cells in tissue? Now, if y'all look where it says high or fairly high, small lymphatic, bone marrow, reproductive cells, intestinal mucosa, so the lining of your stomach, skin, lens of your eyes, and then oral mucosa, which is the lining of your mouth. So it's only going to ask about what is the most sensitive, okay? It's going to give you several options, like A, B, C, maybe even D. Make sure you pick the best one. I've seen on there where it said something about optical. So it didn't straight come out and say lens of the eye. It had some fancy word, but optical was in there. So it's referring to the eyes. So pick that one. Okay. One thing you're never, ever do not pick. Do not be that girl. Don't be her. Don't be this girl. Do not pick thyroid. Don't do it. Where's thyroid on this?
Fairly low.
Fairly low. Now, the reason why I say this is because on state board, whenever we put the lead apron on a patient, it needs to have a thyroid collar that comes up like this. So it will ask on state board, what does the lead apron need to have on it? The thyroid collar. But when it's asking about sensitivity to tissues and cells, it is not the thyroid. Don't be that girl. Don't pick thyroid. Okay? Only if it asks about the lead apron. Then you pick thyroid. Okay. All right. Cumulative effects. Exposure to radiation has cumulative effects that build up over a lifetime. The damage can be compared with the wrinkles and injury that damage can occur from like the sun. If we went and laid out in the sun every single day, our skin would look like a prune, right? It would look like a leathery. So we got cumulative effects from laying out in the sun every single day for a long period of time. That's what that means. Acute and chronic exposure. Acute radiation exposure occurs when a large dose of radiation is absorbed in a short time. Like if a nuclear bomb went off, boom. That's a lot of radiation. It would kill us. But that would be known as acute radiation. And then chronic radiation is when small amounts of radiation are absorbed over a long period of time. So we're getting chronic radiation if we laid out in the sun every single day for an hour. And then it would give us what kind of effects?
A tan.
Girl. A tan. No, what kind of effects do we get from having chronic radiation exposure?
Wrinkles, sunspots.
Cumulative effects. Yes, sunspots and wrinkles too, yes. But cumulative effects is what we would get from having the chronic radiation. Okay. That was the question I was trying to ask. All right, genetic and somatic effects. X-ray exposure affects both genetic and somatic cells. Genetic cells are the reproductive cells, your sperm and ova. Damage to genetic cells is passed on to succeeding generations. These genetic changes are referred to as the genetic mutation. So, like, if I had a baby and then my baby had a baby, their baby, on one hand might have 5 fingers. I mean, 6 fingers. Did anybody look at their hand just now? Like, wait, we have 5 fingers. No? Oh, good. Okay. So they might have 6 fingers on one hand instead of 5. That would be genetic mutation. All other cells in the body belong to a group, somatic tissues. Somatic means referring to the body. X-ray exposure can change somatic tissues, but the damage caused by somatic changes is not passed on to future generations. So you see how the dog looks different? One looks real healthy and the other one doesn't. It looks smaller. One dog looks big and the other dog isn't as big. So, all right. Patient protection. Patient protection, minimizing genetic effects. Although the radiation dose to reproductive cells from a dental x-ray is very small, every patient must wear a lead apron and a thyroid collar. Lead apron with the thyroid collar. There is a portable x-ray unit that most offices are starting to purchase. It's called a Nomad. I want you to get your phones out and I want you to Google a Nomad. A Nomad x-ray. It looks like a laser gun. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, that's it. So do you see the shield on the end of that?
Yes.
Okay. That is, so you can stay in the room and hold that gun and take the x-ray because the little shield around there, that absorbs the scattered radiation. So you still want to put a lead apron, but I've seen some dental offices that if they're using the Nomad, they don't even put a lead apron on. So if they have one, still put one on the patient. It just, to me, it comforts the patient. And yes, I think they still need to wear one. But yes, so that's a portable x-ray unit and it can go from room to room. It's actually kind of heavy. So use both hands and do not drop it. Yeah, it's real expensive. I think it's like $6,000. It's really expensive, but it's super cool. Super cool because you just take the x-ray and it pops up on the computer just like that. It's really cool. It's awesome. So what should the lead apron have on it?
A thyroid collar.
Thyroid collar. Yep, there you go. All right, prescribing x-rays. Now the dentist is not going to sit there and go, okay, let me write out a prescription so I can give this to Rosalind so she can take x-rays. No, he's just going to say, hey, go get me x-rays on this patient and tell you what kind of x-rays he wants. That would be the prescription. But he's prescribing you to go and take those types of x-rays. All right. Who owns the dental x-rays? Y'all remember? I think,
Yes.
yeah, the dentist, he owns the x-rays. Now the patient can have copies of the x-rays, but they can never have the original. All right. Fast speed film. There are the faster the film speed, the less radiation is necessary for the patient. So there is A, B, C, D, E, and F speeds of film. I think y'all have film in your bag. I grabbed a bag, so I brought one home, so I know y'all do. It should be in that cup. But anyway, this is D speed film. They generally will use this because it's not as expensive as F, but F is the fastest speed of film. F for fast. F is the fastest speed of film. And that is a question on state board for sure. But in the real world, we used to use the D because it wasn't as expensive as that. The solution that coats the film. So if I opened up my film packet and I looked at the film, there's little crystals on it. You can't see it with your eye, but they're there, okay? And it coats the film. So the larger the crystals, the faster the speed of film. Digital imaging. Digital imaging. So most of your offices are digital now. You will take X-rays digitally. And there might be a few dentists out there that still uses this is known as traditional film. But most of your offices are digital. And we will get into the two types of digital x-rays in chapter 16 tomorrow. But with digital imaging, you don't need as much radiation as you would have when we use traditional film. It's even less radiation because it's much faster. Digital imaging requires significantly less radiation than conventional film. Exposure time for digital imaging is 70 to 80% less. So that is a question on State Board. Digital imaging is 70 to 80% less than traditional film. Proper equipment. The dental x-ray tube head must be equipped with appropriate aluminum filter, a lead collimator, a positioning indicator device, and the other components of a dental x-ray unit. So when I keep on going, y'all understand what I'm talking about. Go to page 211. All right. Do y'all see at the top of 211 the tube head where it says 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 2 is the tube head. 4 is known as a PID, the positioning indicator device. It's a tube that sticks out of the tube head, and that's what aims at the patient's face to take the x-ray. Now, inside the tube head is a filter. And if you see in a collimator, a filter and a collimator are inside that tube head. So A is the collimator, B is the filter. Okay. So now I'm going to turn back to page 207. Filtration. The purpose of an aluminum filter is to filter out long wavelengths and low energy x-rays from the x-ray beam. That is definitely a state board question. Collimation. So your collimator is a lead plate with a hole in the center. And y'all noticed on page 211 that it had a hole in the middle. What that does, it restricts the size and the shape of the x-ray beam. So someone might have a question about what restricts the size and the shape of the x-ray beam, and you would pick collimator. But then someone might get a question about what shape on the collimator reduces the size and the shape of the x-ray beam to 50% less. And that is going to be a rectangle shape. Instead of the circle, it would be the rectangle, a square. So the square is actually the best because it reduces the size and the shape of the x-ray beam by 50% less. the positioning indicator device, your PID. Everybody say PID
PID.
and then say positioning indicator device.
Positioning indicator device.
Mm-hmm. And hold on. I'm going to try to get a visual so y'all can see what I'm talking about. Oh my God. I'm using a flashlight. But the PID, it's going to be a tube, okay, that comes off of the tube head. And say you're getting an x-ray of tooth number 2, the PID would go straight to that tooth. You're positioning it to where the x-ray beam needs to go to the film. So positioning indicator device, PID. All right. Film holding instruments. There's different devices that is a film holding device, because we never ever are going to take the film, put it in the patient's mouth, and hold it in there with our finger. Never, ever, ever. We'll end up like Mr. Rottingen. So, but we can use film holding devices that actually hold the film and the patient bites on it. There we go again, your lead apron with your thyroid color. And why do we put that on the patient, the lead apron?
To keep them from getting the x-rays.
Because of exposure to radiation.
Yep, exactly. What type of radiation?
Scattered radiation?
Yeah, good. All right. On 210, do you see at the top where it's the mom and the little boy? So they put a lead apron on the mom and then one on the little boy because he was scared. So you can do that as well. And you know what? If you have a pregnant person and their doctor says that they can get an x-ray, I always put 2 lead aprons on them just as a precaution. But on 210, right underneath where the little kid and the mom are, do y'all see those little badges? Those are radiation monitoring badges that you would wear, and it measures how much radiation. And then you would be able to keep up with how much radiation you're getting. And how much can we get in 1 year?
5 rad.
5 rem.
5 rad.
Yep. Okay. Lord, I hope I just said that right. Yeah, 5 rem. I had to think. Yes. But I have never worn one ever. I've never worked at an office where I had to wear one. And I go to different offices on field trips all over. I go to Ennis, Corsicana, Duncanville, Dallas, Cedar Hill. I've never seen any offices make their assistants wear one. But, with the digital x-rays, man, you're barely getting any radiation. You'll have patients that will say, well, I don't want x-rays because I heard that they're harmful. I always tell my patients, you get more radiation going outside and standing in the sun for 10 minutes or 5 minutes than you do from an x-ray. And that's the truth. All right. Components, dental x-ray machine. Components of a dental x-ray machine. Dental x-ray machines may vary slightly in size and appearance, but all three primary components, the tube head, the extension arm, and the control panel. So again, at the top at 211, 2 is your tube head. Then you see that arm, the arm that's holding it, that's your extension arm. So you can push it to the wall, you can pull it, it moves. And then 3 is the control panel that turns the machine off and on. And it also does some other things. So we're going to get into that. But those are your 3 components. And it will ask you on state board, what are the 3 components of a dental x-ray machine? Tube head, extension arm, and control panel. Okay. The tube head is made of metal and has a protective lining to prevent any radiation from escaping. The components of a dental x-ray tube head is made of glass and is approximately 6 inches long and 1 inch in diameter. The air has been removed from the tube to create a vacuum. This vacuum environment allows electrons to flow with minimal resistance between the cathode and the anode. And you're like, what's a cathode? So on state board, the wording will say what produces high-speed electrons. You're going to pick cathode. What produces high-speed electrons? The cathode. That's exactly how it's worded. All right. So the cathode is the negative. Now your anoid, on page 211, your anoid acts as the target for the electron. And on state board, it will be worded. What acts as the target for high-speed electrons? Anoid. And the anoid is a positive. So one person might get a question about cathode, one person might get a question about anoid. So study both. All right. The oil in the x-ray tube absorbs approximately 99% of the energy generated by this process, and this energy is given off as heat. The remaining 1% exists in the tube head as the x-ray beams, the opening is diverted towards the patient. The center portion of the x-ray beam is known as the central or primary beam. So what goes straight to the patient's face, the beam that comes out, that's the primary beam. Your central ray. The collimator, we talked about that. What does the collimator do again, Rosalind?
It controls the size and shape of the x-ray beam.
Good job. Yep. And what is the best shape? Crystal,
Where?
what is the best shape on the collimator?
A square.
Yeah, good. Awesome. Okay. Now your filter, they might ask you how thick the filter is, and it's 0.5 millimeters. The filter removes low energy, long wavelengths from the X-ray beam, which may be absorbed by the patient, but are not necessary for producing an X-ray. So it just, the filter, like any filter, like on a coffee maker, you don't get the extra. It filters out the low energy and the long wavelengths of the X-ray beam. All right, turn to page 212. So the control panel that turns the machine off and on, the X-ray unit off and on, that's known as the master switch. And then, have y'all ever had an X-ray and you hear the button and it's like, or beep? So that is known as the exposure button. And it can be on the outside of the wall, and you just push it, but push it until it quits beeping. So that is known as the exposure timer, your exposure button. Exposure time is measured in fractions. That is a question on State Board. Exposure time, how is exposure time measured is the question. And it's measured in fractions. It might, I don't know if it's going to say fractions or impulses. So just know it's either fractions or impulses is how it's measured. Okay. Underlying impulses. Okay. Your MA selector controls the number of electrons produced. And it will be worded like that. What controls the number of electrons produced? Your MA selector. Your KV selector is used to control the penetrating power or the quality of an X-ray. So it will say what controls the penetrating power or the quality of an X-ray. Your KV selector. Okay. Now, do y'all see at the bottom the picture of that X-ray? Do you see how on the top there, where it's white, those are fillings. So those are amalgam fillings. Amalgam fillings will show up white. Crowns will show up white. Root canals will show up white. But do you notice, and I'm looking at this X-ray, so on the top there, that is tooth number, that's 15, 14. Do y'all see on 13? On 13, do you see the filling? But do you see right there on the distal of 13 where it's dark? Like right above the filling, how it's a little dark circle? That's a cavity. So cavities will show up dark. Do you see where the pulp is? The pulp will show up dark. Okay. So Now we're going to talk about the different shades from white to gray to dark to gray, the shades of an X-ray. So radiolucent is when X-rays come out from gray to dark. And how I remember radiolucent, I think of Lucifer, the devil. He's dark. Okay? Radio opaque is when an X-ray comes out from gray to white. And how I remember radio opaque, I think of an opal, which is a birthstone. It's white and it's got little shimmeries in it. It's October's birthstone. So that's how I remember the difference between radiolucent and radio opaque. All right. There are 4 factors that affect the quality of an X-ray. What do y'all think that means, that affect the quality of an X-ray?
How it comes out, how visible everything is.
Correct. Yep, exactly. So the 4 factors are contrast, density, image distortion, and image detail. So contrast, the image on an X-ray appears in ranges of shades to black and white with multiple shades of gray in between. The difference between the shades of gray are called contrasts. Anybody have anything cute to help you remember that? No. Density is the overall blackness or darkness of an X-ray. So your MA setting controls the density. So if I had a large man in my chair and I needed to get X-rays, I need to turn up the MA setting because I need more radiation to get through my big man. So what's cool about the X-ray units, on the control panel, there will be a picture of a woman, a man, and a child. So if you have, say, a giant woman, you would hit the man, and it would change your KV and your MA setting for you automatically. If you have a little kid, you're going to pick the kid, and then the radiation would change for the KV setting and the MA setting. So your density is how thick they are, basically. And there's some saying like, she's dense. No. Okay. All right. Oh, maybe I'm thinking about she's fat. No, I don't know. I'll keep going. Image distortion.
Thick.
Huh?
I think you're thinking of she's thick.
Oh, maybe that's it. Or that's fat. Didn't that used to be a saying?
I'm thinking of the fat, the PHAT.
Yeah,
Yes.
maybe.
Yes. Oh, Lord. Yep. Density. That's funny. Okay. Image distortion. Image distortion is influenced by object film distance, source film distance, and movement. So, object film distance describes the distance between the teeth, which is known as the object, being x-rayed, and the actual film. So, say my film's in my mouth. I have my film here. And here's my tooth. I need my film close to my tooth. So that's object film distance. Source film distance, you know, here's my fun little PID, positioning indicator device. I need it to be close to the cheek, not touching the cheek, but close to the cheek. If I was real far away, it wouldn't come out as clear as if I was closer. Same like if you took a picture of someone. You know, you take a close up, or you could take one really far away and it wouldn't look as good as the close up. So that is known as source film distance. And then you have movement. So if you went to go take an x-ray of a patient and they moved, what's it going to look like? Blurry. Same thing like if you were taking a picture of one of your friends and they moved, it's going to look blurry. And guys, when you're taking x-rays on kids, they're the worst. You're like, okay, stay really still. And they sit there and watch where you're going. And you're like, oh God. And then you have to go back and you're like, stay still. And they go. So anyway, and that's movement. And that can cause an x-ray to come out bad as well. Any questions on 15? If you noticed, I said read it 3 times. Did that help y'all understand it a little better?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, good. Good,
Just
good, good. Good. Now I will 16 is really long. So we'll go over 16 tomorrow. Okay.
Can you send this video you
Hold on
recorded?
real quick.